All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got an interesting topic on tap for sure. We are talking about falling in love and staying in love with your home. Basically, how not to hate your home. This can happen. And if you're not careful in the home that you get into and go in with eyes wide open. So, we're going to talk about how we go about the process of making sure that you're kind of aware of what we're getting into and how to best keep tabs on everything. So with that, we'll bring in our co-host, Chase Hodson. How you doing, Chase?
Doing good today, Jared. How about you, my friend?
I am good. I appreciate you pivoting on this one. I know we changed up the topic of the episode kind of last minute, and I'll spring this one on you, but I'm sure you'll do great, as you
Yeah,
always do.
gotta be flexible, right?
Yeah, well, I figured we'd kind of address what can happen. We see on occasion where people get into a home, which we're excited for them to get into home ownership, but then they, very quickly realize that there was things missed and that they should have planned better and opened their eyes in regards to a couple things. We'd
Yeah,
like to think that happens with other people's clients, not ours, but
that's right.
so anyway, but yeah, let's just chat
Definitely who
about
we're
that a
talking
little bit on
about.
this. What's that?
That's definitely who we're talking about is other people.
There you go. There you go. Well, cool. Let's do a couple housekeeping items here. For those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Jerod Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our oh boy, I am totally drawing a blank. Our sponsor, sorry for the day, it's our perfect home buying process. That's funny. This in part is actually where we're at. For those of you who can't tell, I'm wearing our apparel today. Love your home is our a slogan, and we built the perfect home buying process over the last couple of decades, specifically to help do a lot of things that help you love your home, such as reports telling you secrets about the industry, helping with assistance from partners such as Chase to help minimize your cost and give you confidence and assurance in your home buying process, contributing up to $500 on both your appraisal and your home inspection at closing. So all these items we've just kind of built over time, podcast series and things like that. So with that, well, we can talk about that a little bit more as we're getting into the discussion. But let's bring Chase on back on here and chat a little bit about kind of the main ticket items of or the main items that we'd like to introduce to our clients to help them buy, of which we're big on education, right? Let's
Yes.
let's create an awareness of what's happening in a very large kind of event in most people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal, right? It's always a big deal. And it's hard thinking about what I'm going to say because like the way we have this laid out, it's so easy to bleed into, to combine everything into one, conversation or sentence. But, you know, there's so much that goes into it, whether it's financial, whether it's location, whether it's affordability, all of those things. And, from there you've got maintenance and like, so there's so much that goes into home ownership, especially for those that haven't owned a home before
Mm-hmm.
and they've always had a landlord or their parents, right?
Yeah.
Making sure everything was taken care of. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I think you touched on kind of the key point here is, you want to walk to something you're going to, not run from something that you, you know, that you don't like. First time home buyers is a good example, right? We will
Yep.
quite often have those discussions because their landlord did something, raised the rent, won't address an issue on the house, or said something inappropriate or whatever. I don't know. Insert
Right.
reason here, of which now you're kind of running from that, where we'd like to walk into something. And I say walk because we want to take our time, we want to plan. We always talk about getting them in front of you as quick as we can, understand what their financial position is, what loan program to get into and all that. So
Yeah.
again, we both have educator background, and that's kind of our approach to the process. And of course, first time home buyers, need the most because they haven't done it before.
Yeah, again, there's just so much that goes into it, and that's the easiest way to make sure that you love your home, right? Like the process is not simple. Um, we like to make sure that we take care of most things so that it's as simple as possible, but you don't want the process to be miserable, and you definitely don't want the end result of when you move into your home to be unhappy at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other reason that we talk about walking into it is because, we do want to talk about all this stuff. One you touched on earlier that I'll reference is location. Sometimes, again, when you're running from something, you make a knee jerk and say, oh, there's a house, let's get it. And
Right.
we've talked about this ad nauseum that it's so easy just to meet folks at a property because they saw it online, asked to be shown in, and now all of a sudden they fall in love with it, but they haven't factored in commute times, access to recreation, accessibility to services, proximity to family, all of
Right.
that. They just think I'm getting away from my rental situation, and here's a house that does that. And
Yep.
that does address that immediate need, but it doesn't address all the other long-term needs. So we need to have those conversations, even though if it's not the immediate focal point. And
Right.
in part, that's
Right.
our job to help illuminate that these are other factors we need to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Our job to put it out because they don't, especially when you talk about first time home buyers, they don't know what they don't know.
Right, right. Yeah, so let's share that with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I triggered another thought too. So there's kind of, yeah, what do you want in a home, and then what don't you want in a home?
Right.
That's the piece that a lot of first-time home buyers, I don't know what question to ask because I've never experienced that where people that have bought before they're like, I clearly don't want that to happen again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and and it helps too with our experiences, knowing is especially with you being the one showing the home and guiding them through that part of the process, um, knowing where they're at in life, right? History, historical clients for us teach us, what could possibly help those that we face, that we're going to come in contact with in the future, right? So, are you single? Did you just get married? Are you planning on having kids? Like all of those things to help guide them, as best as we can.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Chase. Understanding where they're at, we call them life events. People buy homes from life events, right? They
Yep.
have a child on the way, they lost a child, they, transition jobs, so what do those life events mean? And the one that just popped into my head as you were speaking was um, people get really concerned about, and this is a legitimate concern, what can they financially afford?
Yeah.
And it's easy to lose focus on whether your income has an extremely, could aggressive potential uptick or not, right? If you're young and you're just starting in a good career, and by the way, there's two of you that are doing that, we feel a lot more comfortable that long term, mid to long term, financially, this is going to be a
Right.
good fit for you
Right. Right.
versus hey, you've kind of leveled off, peaked out, and you're maxed out at the same time. That's not a good
Yeah.
position.
Yeah. It's not. And what's that look like in a month or 6 months or a year if economically things change? So I mean, I'm that guy, right? Like I'm a sales guy at heart, and I've been in a lot of different industries, and I do have the philosophy. I had a regional manager tell me once that anytime he hires somebody new, he tells them that because of their territory they need to go out and buy a new vehicle, right? Like so he liked to back people into a corner a little bit because that's human nature, right? Like for most of us, we tend to go out and grow, right? Like we tend to if I have this bill, I'm gonna figure out how to make sure that I can afford it, right? And so I do have that mindset, but when it comes to owning a home, that's one of the biggest purchases you're ever going to make for 99% of the public. And so knowing while we might want to push the envelope a little bit in order for them to get what they need or want, we don't want to push it too far. We want to make sure that we're in a secure place.
Yeah, well, so let's yeah, that's we're kind of already talking about the financial topic discussion, which it's easy to get into, right? Because that's one of the biggies. Um,
Yeah,
but I think
definitely.
your point is well said. You know, you're right in the sales world. You know, that's a tactic some managers will employ. It's like, hey, you know, people rise to the occasion, and you know, if you need a car, go get a car. You're gonna get, you know, you're gonna get a new payment, but you're also gonna uh, you excel at what you do and grow because you're getting pushed a little bit. You know, but I totally agree with you. That's not how we approach the home buying market, um, because you've got to be able to stay in this home. And part of the education process is, hey, you're concerned about a house payment. It's kind of interesting because you're making a payment to the landlord, and they're not going to let you stop making a rental payment any
Right.
more than a mortgage lender is going to let you stop. But it is a longer, you know, you know, it's a slightly different arrangement with the lender than with your landlord.
Yeah. Yeah, it
But
definitely is. And the ramifications are different, right? Like, a lot of times if you don't make rent or, you get, evicted because of rent, it's doesn't your credit doesn't take a hit. Your ability to re-rent isn't, as bad. But if that happens, right, if you get foreclosed on or short sale, there are long lasting ramifications of that. So that's one of the reasons that we want to make sure that we want to educate people and make sure that, they're going to be able to keep the home. And that's the plus, right? It's if in order to get to the financial benefits, we have to make sure you're going to be able to stay in the home.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
yeah, and educating them on the different options. You know, I've had people that are very nervous about that. Uh, and I'm like, you know, there's two of you. Certainly, the best way you could go when this is on a single income, but that's, you know, uh,
Yeah,
most people want more than what a single income these days can afford. But kind of a worst case scenario: what if things do change? You know, what if somebody does you lose a job or what have you? Is like, hey, you might not like the idea, but get a renter. You own the house. You can put a tenant in one of the bedrooms and bring in some income. So educating them on what that might look like, and
yeah,
then, you know, if things do get really tough, you know, what are some options that we have at our disposal to help them, you know, in worst case scenarios, like, you know, selling the home or, you know,
right.
different loan product or what have you that might help them out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I mean, there's so much that goes into those first steps of the educational process when you think about buying a home, and we've touched on a lot of them. But I think I really want to stress that having working with the right people like is so important, especially when you're talking about your real estate agent. Somebody like you that knows the area very well, knows the benefits, knows the school districts, knows I mean, you can look all that stuff up, but if you don't have somebody that's advocating for you and saying this is what you don't know, this is what you need to be sure of before you buy a home, that the taxes from county to county, even different sides of the same county, are vastly different. And so it's one of those things you need to be working with the right people, that can help guide you through that process.
Yeah, you'd hate to learn about that kind of after the fact. You know, Ada County is more expensive, has higher taxes, or excuse me, Canyon County has higher taxes than Ada County, and if you don't
Right.
know that, so yeah, you're spot on. You help educate them on the things that make people potentially want to sell her earlier, sooner than later.
Right.
You know, I'll back up to kind of the COVID times where people were having to move really fast. I mean, you literally like almost had to entertain putting an offer together as you were driving out to look at the house.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so you're trying to educate people. You know, hopefully they've been looking and asked a lot of the right questions, have bought before, and know what questions to get answered, whether it's by us or just in general. But now we have a lot of people because of crunch mode looking at wanting to buy elsewhere because they were kind of rushed into something that wasn't just right.
Yeah. yeah, have a lot of those conversations, right? Like it was, I got to get out of where I'm at, and I need a house, and this is the only one that I've gotten can get an accepted offer on,
Yeah.
and they're not happy, right? Like that. Oh, well, we don't. We turns out we don't like this neighborhood. We don't like this part of town. We don't like, it's not enough house, or it's too much house, or whatever it might be. We're seeing a ton of that right now.
Yeah, and by the way, now they're in a good for them. They're in a really low interest rate, right? In the twos, threes, fours, what have you. So it's like, okay, I'm going to trade that, for a different interest rate. But even if it's not the perfect scenario, at least if you go in with your eyes wide open, and I'll have that conversation, especially during COVID. It's like, look, if you're looking for your forever home, our inventory's low, our market is rushed, and you're telling me you've concluded you absolutely want to buy, you just do not want to rent, and that's your decision, good for you. But is the perspective, is this my forever home?
Right.
And if you change that perspective, maybe your requirements will shift a little bit. Hey, what if we bought this as a future rental? We know we don't want to necessarily be, in this neighborhood, in this area that we've sacrificed here or there, but we position ourselves to keep this as a rental so that, as our options, open up, then we can buy our forever home. It's all about making that decision up front rather than trying to correct it on the back end.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, yeah. There's
There's a
again,
lot.
like, yeah, there's so much that goes into it as far as educating you. Like that's a perfect. None of that happened, right? Like what you're talking about, very little. And when you think about it, if you bought 2 years ago and you're selling now, right? There's a cost to sell
I was going to
along
go
with
there
the
next. Yeah.
buy. And even though your home has likely appreciated, if you weren't one of those that spent $100,000 over asking in order to get the house,
Right.
um, that your home is likely appreciated, but still with those costs, are you losing money to get out of it now to get into the house that you wanted?
Right. Right. Yeah. How soon after the purchase are you going to do that? And when I labeled market, that's kind of where I'm going with that. Let's really understand what the market is doing today, because even people that have bought multiple times, three, four, five, six times, you know, some of those clients are kind of interesting because they're like, yeah, I've been there, done that, I know how this goes. But the market's always different. So even if
Yeah.
you've bought multiple times, if you don't know what's going on in the market, how to participate, what game is it I'm playing? Like I use the card game analogy all the time. Which card game am I playing?
Yeah.
You put down the wrong card in the wrong game, you have
Right.
the different result. So, let's quickly bring you up to speed on, where the market's at, where do we think it's going. One of the one we talk about a lot is people think, oh, you know, we had an 08, 09 meltdown, the market's going to crash, I'm just going to wait, for when that happens, and I'm going to get a good deal. And I preface this part of the conversation with, you're absolutely correct. I don't have a crystal ball, but all indications are our market's not going to crash. The reason we crashed is gone, reasons. And now we're still low on inventory. We'll probably be low on inventory for a long time. The demand coming into our market is not slowing down, it's only picking up. So I don't foresee a major crash, and we're looking at it from a micro level and not a macro level. We're looking at
Yeah.
Boise, Idaho, when they're hearing crashing markets in like, in the southeast or something like that. It's different.
It's interesting, right, on that topic specifically. I just, and we don't, again, no crystal ball. We definitely don't. People didn't predict, well, most people didn't predict 2008, but there was obviously a lot of things going on, right, that led to that, that you could see. Now, and the numbers came out yesterday, right? I mean, we're looking at, you know, 5% month over month. I think we were at, gosh, I can't remember specifically, but we were at like 17% year over year, right? So, I mean,
Massive.
it's the homes are still appreciating, and part of that is the low inventory, right? And there's no quick fix to that.
Right.
And when you talk about a crash, I mean, if you go back to the history, back to the 40s and the Depression, like there's like two recessions, where real estate values have gone down. '08 being one of them, and obviously that's the most fresh in everybody's mind.
Yeah. Neither of which was permanent.
Right, and it's not typical, right? Like it's so homes blowing up or the balloon, the bubble popping, like everybody likes to say, is that's not typical for a recession. Um, and so, and gosh, that's one of the things that I struggle with saying that word even, right? Because people freak out. But that's healthy for an economy too, right?
Yeah.
Like the economy is a living, breathing thing, and real estate is one of the biggest parts of our economy and one of the major drivers of what we do.
Yeah.
And you need those, right? Like I've talked about this a lot recently. Our home values are still appreciating, right? Like we're still going up, but we're not going up at the rate. It's a more stable rate of appreciation that's more healthy, right? And so that's part of a recession, is bringing those numbers back down to where they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The other one I want to talk about briefly, and I'm pretty sure we've got a whole nother episode on this, but new construction versus existing, educating him, because if you get in one versus the other, that could really get you to hate your home.
Hmm.
I'm a big new construction proponent guy, in part because of the warranty that comes with the new construction home. Right? I
Right.
mean, there's other reasons, but I want to know that I'm not replacing a roof anytime soon. My big costly items, such as furnaces, AC units, whatever. There's a less degree of likelihood that I'm going to make any significant investments anytime soon. But what people don't know is, you got to think about. Got to almost always buy a refrigerator, almost
Hmm.
certainly a washer and dryer, my blinds, even in some cases the backyard,
Hmm.
sprinklers, sod, fencing. Where in an existing, it's a lot of that's there, and you get into that new home where you can't put the dogs in the backyard because it's muddy, and you don't have blinds in your bedroom. You got sheets hanging up because
Yeah.
you spent all your money
Yeah.
buying your house, and now you hate your brand new house.
Yeah. And that's like you talked about. That's most that a lot of times that's a financial decision or a fear of having to fix things. But it's not like there's no expenses going into a new home, right? Like
Right.
it's there are still expenses. They're just different.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the kind of the opposite of that is, hey, I'm going to buy an existing home because I love the mature trees. I know what the neighborhood's going to look like. Our homeowners maintaining it. There's a lot of upside to that.
Yep.
But then again, maybe you know, hopefully you didn't have this happen, but either didn't do an inspection or didn't have a helpful inspection. And 6 months into it, you bought it at the beginning of winter, and the heat comes on in the spring, and your AC tanks on you,
Yeah.
and you're like,
It, the interesting, you kind of can liken it to cars, right? New versus used, right? Like
yeah,
I've owned both, and you can get a new one that's a lemon. Like you
yeah,
can, but you when you buy used, there's definitely more of a risk of buying someone else's problem, right? And having to fix things that haven't been maintained properly. So
yeah.
it's
But
just
it's
six of one, half a dozen of the other.
yeah, but it's all about education. Why, what to think
For sure.
about, and then, by the way, get an inspection so that you have even more information to think about, and a good inspector is going to communicate all that.
Man, one of the biggest complaints that I've always heard over the years, and I've been around new construction a lot, um, is knowing how close your subdivision is to being done. Right?
Hmm.
Like if you're the first cat that moves on to a street, guess what? There's going to be a lot of dust, a lot of traffic, and a lot of mud for a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
years. So,
yeah, yeah. And the upside is sometimes you can get in at a better price.
right,
Because it's earlier and they haven't appreciated as much, but sometimes developers are just wanting to get some momentum in the community, and they're discounting price. But you got to know the trade off, right? Almost everything comes with a plus and a minus, advantage and disadvantage. But It's all about knowing what those are and going, okay, I can stomach that. Or, you know what, I have, was it asthma or I have bad respiratory issues and that
Mm.
dust is going to kill me.
Yeah.
Not literally, but you know what I mean. I'm going to contend with this for a long time.
Yeah. A long time. And so it's, yeah, just, yeah, there's lots of questions.
Yeah.
Work,
Yeah.
work with the right agent that can, help you know which questions to ask.
Well, and I'd like to take it another step forward is, and you touched on it. If they've been doing it long enough, we're looking for or even asking the questions to provide answers to questions you might not ask, or if
Right.
you do, I already know it. You know, you've
Yep.
said something about your health and your lungs or whatever. To go back to my earlier point, and I'm going to point out like, hey, this is what this community is going to look like for the next little bit here. I, if we should put some thought into that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That proactive, and it's, yeah. If somebody's just unlocking a door and letting you go through a house and not bringing you any information, then you're definitely with the wrong person.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, and I'm a little hesitant to say here because the shameless plugs don't sit well with me, and this is going to sound like one, and if I'm honest, it kind of is. But so our slogan is "Love Your Home," and that's what we're talking about today. But our motto is service you consultants you can trust, service you deserve.
Yeah.
And we put a lot of thought into that and mean that. To your point, it's not about our paycheck. And if it's not the
Right.
right time for you for whatever reason, we're okay with saying, hey, we should wait 6 months, a year, what have you, versus, I hate to say it, but the more transactional minded agent,
Right.
they're being asked to close another deal this month, because they're meeting some numbers or their
Right.
numbers, and that's just not right. Um, and I think we just all have to admit that happens. And as a home buyer, you need to be aware that can happen and avoid that, because once it's closed, I hate to say it, but those transactional minded agents, they're just moving on to the next transaction.
Right.
You know,
That's
you and
absolutely right.
I, this is repeat and referral business. If I wasn't aware of that issue, didn't point out that issue, and I just moved on, there's no way you're coming back to use me as an agent in your next purchase or sale, right?
No,
Or
that's right.
refer me, which is
That's
our
right.
long-term objective. Anyway,
Always,
anyway,
always,
lots,
always.
lots here. Um,
Yeah.
we are coming up on our 30 minutes. We haven't even much touched on the second topic, so let's uh, let's move into these a little bit. And this is your wheelhouse here. So yeah, what's your kind of your approach to and how you handle the kind of the financial side of things to make sure folks love their home?
So I'm very financial minded, right? I man, I've talked about my parents on here a few times, but it was one of the examples that was set for me, right? My dad was a small business owner, and I saw him work his butt off his whole life. No retirement account, no anything. Um, but the pieces I didn't put together, right? Like he was working his butt off to make a payment on a house and land and a rental house, and he owned the dirt that his building sat on that he built, and he owned the dirt, and you know what I mean. So he was able to retire because of that. And growing up, I didn't see that. I just saw, man, he just works, and I got to be better at putting stuff away. Well, he did,
He was putting
right.
stuff away in dirt.
He put it away in dirt, and that allowed him to retire and live out his dream while he was still here.
Yeah.
So I try to be very, very financial minded. I had there's so much that goes into it. Appreciation and equity is the first thing that people like to talk about, and that's awesome, right? But you gotta have to be able to get to that point. So what do your finances look like? Are you building retirement? I had man, it was really early in my career. I had a first time home buyer, and we worked really hard to get them in their house. And after they closed, they came in and talked to me, and they're sitting there, and they have their 2-year old on the mom has a 2-year old on her knee, and they were so happy to be in their house. And she doesn't work; she stays at home with the kid, and he's it. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks, right? It's like, I helped you do this, which is amazing,
Yeah.
but have I set you up to keep it?
Yeah.
You know, and from that point, I changed the way that I did things, and I started really focusing on the financials. And then, I even so far as to take my life insurance classes. I never got my license, but I wanted to educate myself on that, right? So I could talk to them, like that family right there. Do you have a policy,
Hmm.
right? If we get you in this home, can you still afford a policy? Because if something happens to him, the only breadwinner in the family, are you okay? Are you and
Right.
your son okay,
Right.
right? And so there's really a lot that goes into it. Um, and so if I've done my job properly, right, and you are responsible, because I can only do so much, right? Like you,
Right. Right.
like well, we can set you up for success, but if you're responsible at that point, then you get the appreciation and the equity. And I like to look at that as a forced savings account,
Yeah.
right? Like with my dad, that's his retirement account.
Yeah.
That he makes that payment every month,
Yeah.
and at some point in your life, if you make that payment enough, then you get to use that, right?
Yeah.
So, and the great thing is you can't touch it. It's not easy to touch. You have to do a cash out refinance. You have to sell the property, or you have to do a HELOC, right?
Yeah.
Um, and hopefully people are talking to me before they start accessing the equity in it. We
Right.
make sure it's for the right thing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that long-term affordability is key,
yeah.
right? In to being able to get to that forced savings account.
Yeah. Well, I want to back up just a little bit because I think it's important for folks to know. But your view is not only how are you going to keep it in the short, mid, long term, whatever that strategy is, years, decades, whatever. But once you have it, what are you building, right? Majority of millionaires, their wealth comes in large part from real estate.
Hmm.
So, you got to keep it in order to continue earning gaining appreciation on your property.
Right.
So let's at least have that going on. And then, by the way, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to parlay that into another house that appreciates more
Hmm.
or faster? And then, by the way, what are you going to do with that to help move your financial position forward?
Yes. Oh, and that's key. Like there's gosh, and I probably should have had a visual or something that I could put on here, but basically I look at it as there's if you've got a circle and it's cut into 4 pieces, right? And your home, your primary residence is one of them, and the metric is typically 3 times your annual income is what your home should be worth, right? And now you're putting money in there as saving. You want to have $25,000 in liquid assets. You want to have a 401k or some type of retirement account that you're maxing out every year. And so you go through all of these things, and I can give you a roadmap on how to set that up. And then once you've started getting um, your home has started appreciating, and you're getting equity. Okay, now what do we do here, right? Like you say, like if your income increases, then the size of your home should increase. And what are you doing with that home you're vacating, right? Are you at a good interest rate? Can you turn that into a rental? Do you sell that and buy 2 properties? There's so many different things that you can do, and so many ways to invest in real estate. Whether it's single family, multifamily, REITs, but that's how people get up that ladder faster,
Hmm.
is through real estate.
Hmm.
It is by far the best way, most reliable way. And you might not gain $500,000 overnight with like you do with Bitcoin, but you're not going
You're
to lose
also
half
not
a
going to
million
lose it
dollars
as fast either.
overnight either.
Yeah.
Real estate always goes up. It just does. I mean, you
Right.
talk to those people in 2008, and the balloon popped, and their home wasn't worth what they paid for it. The people that kept their home, that had at least made the smart financial decision to buy what they could afford to pay each month,
Yep.
had a windfall when the market finally
Oh
turned.
yeah. 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 They anything that they thought they would have lost might have bummed them out, but they never lost it unless they sold it.
Right.
And those are the people that lost versus the people that held on to it. Yeah, it kind of sucked for a little while to look at the value, depreciating value of their home, but they still had a roof over their head. They might have still had some write offs, what have you.
Right.
But long term, yeah, like you said, it shot up right after that. And they all made very significant, I don't know about all, but I mean, the majority of them, it went up so much that they were able to sell that home, get a much, much bigger home when just not that long ago, they were, you know, complaining about how much the value of that last home went down. It's like, well,
Right.
kind of like stocks,
Yeah.
right? You don't lose it until you sell it.
It always goes up, right? And just like any investment you make, like if you look at the stock market, it's going to go up and down. Like, we've been seeing that recently here in the upcoming weeks, and unfortunately, it's really good for real estate, right? As the stock market goes down, typically bond market goes up, which helps interest rates, and so we're starting to see those trickle down. But in anything that you invest, there's typically risk. There's only one thing that's 100% a return, like that you don't have to worry about, and that's life insurance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that is one investment you make that 100% is going to pay out because none of us make it out of your life, right?
Right, right, right.
But everything else there's risk involved. But with real estate, there's less risk, right? You can go back through the history of time, history of the United States and real estate, and you can see that just over time it's always increasing. Even if it has those little blips where it goes down, it's still a solid investment that's going to pay out if you keep it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, so do you want to talk anymore? I know you briefly touched on taxes and insurance. Is that able to cover
Yes.
all that?
Yeah, I'll go over it real briefly. So obviously, depending on how you file your taxes, if you itemize, there can be tax benefits from owning a home. I touched briefly on the insurances, right? Like, and we talked a little bit about the risk, but there's homeowners insurance that helps to mitigate that risk. There's also, oh my gosh, you can get specific insurances, right, for the big items like force unit and um,
You talk about like
for
home warranty?
yeah, home warranty, right? That can cover that. It's like an insurance
Yeah,
when you buy it. So if you do end up going used instead of new, there's ways to mitigate some of those costs as well.
right.
Um, and the other insurance, like I talked about, is life insurance, right? Like making sure that you have something in place to make that payment for you, or that your family's taken care of, and the house will be paid for if something happens to you,
Hmm.
right? And I've gone so far as to um, I'm a huge proponent of whole life, and I'm funding a whole life policy that gives me access to equity, just like my home gives me access to equity, and I can bounce those two back and forth, and further my investments in real estate.
Hmm.
There's lots of ways to advance as far as the financial piece of it. Um, you have to make that first step. You have to get to a position where where your affordability allows you to take that first step.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a lot. And I'm even struggling right now to remember what the last. Oh, okay. So this one thankfully is a good is a quick one because we're again way past our half an hour mark. But um, the first one that we got to talk about is almost everybody thinks, why would I do an inspection on a new home? And you said something earlier, I think was almost just spot on about new construction. I'm trying to remember exactly what that was, but
You
um,
can buy a lemon that's new construction as well.
that's what it was. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have that third party inspection, and they're like, no, there are some major deficiencies, concerns here. Um, you know, uh, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to let the builder, address it? Are you going to look to terminate? What are you going to do? But if you're just trusting that the builder and the smaller inspections during the build process are going to catch it all, um, that may or may not work.
No, no, it doesn't. It does. Man, one of the most eye-opening things that I've done is there's a couple inspectors on TikTok, which, like, man, that those little bits of information, you can fill your brain with a lot of crap there. But um, there's a lot of inspectors like from all over the country that are on there, and they're walking through with their inspections, like, studs that are cut short, and like all of this stuff that can be missed and covered up.
Hmm.
Now, I will say that back to what we talked about in the first place, at the first point, if you're working with an agent that knows the area, knows the new construction and the builders that are, you can mitigate some of that risk and avoid maybe a builder that doesn't have as good a reputation, right?
Hmm.
But there's so much that can be, I mean, down to foundations poured, right, and then it rains for a month,
Yeah.
right? And then they cover it up, and it didn't get dried out properly, and mold can start in a new home as well. And so just understanding that, yeah, a lot can happen. Um, Man, there was a contractor that I used to work with years ago, and he's like, yeah, you just have to realize that there's only one perfect man that walked the face of this earth, and I ain't him. So,
Right, right, right. Yeah, if you want to hate your house, forego the inspection and get
hmm
get get caught off guard. That'll make you hate your house.
yep,
Even a new construction. Yeah, we've heard horror stories even on new construction, that you wouldn't, and actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. I will say that new new construction home buyers, I've seen it a number of times that we went through the inspection and nothing was there, or
yeah,
little to nothing. But in every case, they were happy that they spent a couple $100 for that peace of mind.
yes.
Um,
And with,
very,
with when
what's
it's
that?
not a new home, right? Like, there's going to be something, but you understand going into it. Okay, what you're mitigating that risk, right?
Correct.
Like, okay, this I can deal with, this I can't.
Right. Right. Yeah, so I think it's equally important. And again, go back a little bit, and we could talk about existing. But to make an assumption that a new construction home is without a flaw, it just doesn't happen. I've seen one where the dryer vent just didn't quite evacuate out the roof, and it was going into the attic where there was insulation. I mean, who knows how bad that could have gotten? That could have been a major safety issue. But for whatever reason, the builder just didn't catch that. The third party inspector did. That was a very inexpensive, easy fix. But, had he not caught that, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah.
Uh, I helped another person buy a house that seemed bulletproof. He's like, man, I just don't see any reason. Like, this person was kind of OCD and just kept really good maintenance on the house, and the builder was really good. But he opted to do that. Well, there was a pipe down below the sink that, shortly after, or even during construction, I should say, broke off a little bit. So everything that was going down the sink, the garbage disposal, was going into the crawl for months.
Jeez.
And the inspector pulled the crawl space access open, and all the smell came out. And could you imagine? Anyway, just to give a couple of examples of occasions where we thought maybe they could get away without spending a couple $100, that
Yeah.
they're just really glad they did, because in either case, or many other examples, would you hate to get caught off guard there. But yeah, to your point with existing homes, um, going in eyes wide open about what, not do I have an issue, but what is my issue?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that, but it, like you said, you buy a 10-year-old car, what's my issue?
hmm
You
There will be
don't have,
something.
yeah, I mean, I can guarantee you don't have brand new tires, you don't have brand new brakes, you don't have brand new engine. I mean, just by virtue of it being on the road for any length of time, all of those are now not new, and how good a shape are they in?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it'll happen. But in order to have mature landscaping and trees and, you know, a certain style of house or whatever it is, affordability, like it's worth that, right? Like, and during that inspection, they'll typically tell you how many years of roof life they think is left, right? Like, you can get that information, and then you're an informed buyer, and you know what you're looking for, or
yeah.
you know what you have to look forward to.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, Chase. As an example, I have some clients who are buying an older home, and I called it the time capsule because not only was it older, but it was not updated. It was like you walked right into the 1970s,
Love it.
literally. Felt like you were on a movie set. Um, and we had an inspector go in who's a generalist who's giving them all this information, but we also did a secondary and tertiary inspection, roof, HVAC system. We had some
Yeah.
specialists come in, and it provided them the opportunity to talk to all three of these, professionals to say, okay, we know we're not buying something new. Oh, and by the way, they had radiant heating that was old and outdated and in some zones not working, and they were going to have to swap out for new systems. The
Yeah.
upstairs was cooled, but the downstairs was not cooled, and they were going to have to put in mini split systems. But my point is, they got an opportunity to talk about, what is before they closed on the home, what is it that they were going to do to address those issues and go get
Right.
bids to say, hey, what does a mini split look like? And do I want that? How much does it cost me? Can I afford that? So they just eyes wide open went into the
Right.
property and said, okay, it's a time capsule, but I know what I'm getting into in a pretty high degree of confidence. Let's move forward. So anyway,
Yep.
I like to share examples sometimes that make sense, for folks to,
I love it. I
but,
love it.
but again, they might not have preferred that, but they still love their home because they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Versus close on the home and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, I hate this house every day.
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
and by the way, just as a side note, but kind of interesting, they had a 30-gallon water heater for a four bedroom, three bath house, and they were going to have six people living in the house. Anyway,
It didn't work out well.
yeah, for those of you who don't know, that's a lot of cold showers.
Yeah, a lot.
That's a lot. So talk about hating your house. If
Yeah,
you're you're last person up, trying to take a shower after kids are at school and you know wife or husband's at work or heading to work or whatever.
that's funny. That is
So
funny.
anyway, lots there. We've covered a lot of territory, Chase. You're always super helpful on these discussions, and we know your heart's in the right spot, wanting to educate, inform, and put people in a position where they're not burdened financially, where they're not concerned or fearful of what they've got themselves into. And we sincerely appreciate your partnership and helping our clients get into and stay in their homes.
I love it, man. Always appreciate it. Enjoy being on here, and yeah, likewise. Like
Awesome.
anybody that works with you is, they picked the right one. They're blessed.
Ah,
Their life will be blessed.
thanks, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. All right. Well, with that, we've gone super long as we often do, but we'll sign off and we'll wish everybody a blessed one.
Take care.